I never believed in miracles until the night I needed one so desperately that the universe had no choice but to answer. Though looking back now, I'm not sure what found me in that rain-soaked alley was divine intervention or something far more dangerous. The diner's neon sign flickered behind me as I locked the door, my feet aching and shoes held together more by hope than stitching. 11 hours. 11 hours of forced smiles, scalding coffee pots, and customers who thought a $1 tip justified treating me like furniture. But I couldn't complain. Every crumpled bill in my apron pocket was another minute of life support for Marco. Another day the machines would breathe for my little brother while he floated somewhere between this world and the next. The hospital was 6 blocks east, and I made the walk every night after closing, rain or shine. Tonight it was rain. Cold November rain that soaked through my thin jacket within seconds, plastering my dark hair to my cheeks. I didn't run. Running required energy I'd stopped having weeks ago. Street. Catherine's hospital rose ahead, its windows glowing like amber eyes in the darkness. I'd memorized every crack in its concrete steps, every flickering light in the ICU corridor. Room 407. That's where my world had shrunk to a sterile box filled with beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of postponed grief. Marco lay exactly as I'd left him that morning. 20 years old, scholarship athlete, brother who'd raised me as much as I'd raised him after our parents died. One drunk driver, one rainy intersection, and now this. His face peaceful, hands still, chest rising and falling only because machines told it to. He's stable, the night nurse told me, her smile sympathetic but practiced. She'd given me the same smile for 43 days straight. I nodded, pressing my forehead to the cold window of his room, watching the numbers on the monitors stay steady. Steady meant alive. Steady meant time. But time, I'd learned, costs money. Miss Ruiz? I turned to find Administrator Hoffman approaching, his expression the practiced neutral of someone about to deliver bad news wrapped in professional courtesy. My stomach dropped. We need to discuss your brother's account. He led me to his office, and I sat in the chair I'd worn smooth with previous visits, my wet clothes leaving marks on the leather. The folder he opened was thick, every page a reminder of exactly how powerless I was. The treatment so far has exceeded $230,000, he said, not unkindly. Your initial insurance covered a fraction. The payment plan we arranged. Miss Ruiz, you're 11 weeks behind. I know. I'm working doubles. I just need a little more time. We've been generous with extensions. He slid a paper across the desk, and I saw the words that made my vision swim. Final notice. Without payment by Friday, we'll have no choice but to transition Marco to county care. County care. The place where miracles went to die, where patients became numbers and attention, was a luxury reserved for those who could afford it. Please. My voice cracked. Please, he's all I have. I'll find a way. I promise. Just give me one more week. I'm sorry. The board's decision is final. He actually looked sorry, which somehow made it worse. I don't remember leaving his office. Don't remember walking through the corridors or pushing through the hospital's front doors into the rain that had turned vicious. I just remember standing there on the sidewalk, water streaming down my face, mixing with tears. I was too tired to hold back, and whispering into the storm, whatever it takes. That's when I felt it, the weight of being watched. Across the street, barely visible through the downpour, a black car idled at the curb. Sleek, expensive, the kind that didn't belong in this neighborhood. Its windows were tinted, but I could feel eyes on me, assessing, calculating. For a long moment, neither of us moved me on my side of the street, drowning in rain and desperation, the mysterious observer on theirs, hidden behind luxury and dark glass. Then the car's engine purred to life, and it glided away into the night, disappearing around the corner like it had never been there at all. I wrapped my arms around myself and started the long walk home, unaware that someone had just heard my prayer and decided to answer it. The next night, I was wiping down tables after the dinner rush, when Marcus, the line cook, stuck his head through the kitchen window. "Elena, some guy's asking for you. Out back." I frowned. "Who?" "Didn't say. Looks expensive, though. Probably gonna complain about something." "Great. Just what I needed." I tossed my rag aside and pushed through the back door into the alley where we kept the dumpsters, expecting to find an angry customer upset about an overcooked burger. Instead, I found him. He stood near the brick wall, somehow making the grimy alley look like a boardroom. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. His dark hair was styled back, revealing a face that could have been carved from marble-sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim light from the street lamp. But it wasn't his looks that made me freeze. It was the way he looked at me, like he already knew everything about me, like I was a problem he'd already solved. Elena Ruiz. Not a question, a statement. Do I know you? Not yet. He took a step closer, and I noticed the watch on his wrist platinum, with a strange logo I couldn't quite make out. But I know you. 26 years old, orphaned at 16. Raised your younger brother alone while finishing high school. He's currently in street. Catherine's ICU, prognosis uncertain, medical debt insurmountable on a waitress's salary. Ice flooded my veins. Who the hell are you? Someone with a solution to your problem. He reached into his jacket. I tensed, but he only pulled out an envelope. I'm prepared to pay all of your brother's medical expenses. Every bill, current and future, plus enough to ensure he receives the best care available. I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. Why would you do that? Because I need something from you. He opened the envelope, revealing a contract and a check. Even from a distance, I could see the number of zeros. Marriage. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. You're insane. I'm practical. His voice was smooth, controlled. I need a wife for personal reasons I don't care to explain. You need money desperately. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. 1 year of your life in exchange for your brother's. I don't even know your name. Adrian Moretti. He said it like I should recognize it, but the name meant nothing to me. The contract is straightforward. We marry quietly. You live in my home. Appear at my side when required. In return, full medical care for Marco, a monthly stipend for you, and a substantial settlement when the year ends. My mind reeled. This couldn't be real. People didn't just offer money for marriage. Not outside of movies and trashy novels. There has to be a catch. The catch is that you'll belong to me for 12 months. Your time, your presence, your loyalty. He tilted his head slightly. But nothing else. I won't demand what you don't offer freely. This is crazy. This is necessity. He held out the check, and I saw my brother's salvation written in ink and numbers. Friday, they move Marco to county care. That's 3 days from now. After that, his chances of recovery drop to nearly zero. So ask yourself, Elena, how far are you willing to go to save him? Whatever it takes. That's what I'd whispered into the storm. I thought of Marco's peaceful face, machines breathing for him. Thought of Administrator Hoffman's sympathetic eyes. Thought of the tips jar that never filled fast enough and the bills that never stopped coming. How do I know you'll actually pay? Adrian, because apparently that was his name, pulled out his phone and made a call. Transfer the funds now. He hung up and nodded toward the hospital in the distance. By the time you get there tonight, Marco's account will be cleared and his care upgraded. Consider it a show of good faith. Before I even agree? You're going to agree. We both know that. He produced a pen from his pocket, expensive and silver. The only question is whether you do it with dignity or desperation. I hated him in that moment. Hated his certainty, his wealth, his casual manipulation of my powerlessness. But hate wasn't enough to pay hospital bills. My hand trembled as I took the pen. The contract was dense with legal language I barely understood, but the core terms were clear. 1 year, marriage, in exchange for everything I needed. I thought about telling him to go to hell, about walking back into the diner with my pride intact and my brother dying. Instead, I signed my name on the line. Adrian took the contract, folded it precisely, and tucked it back into his jacket. Friday, 10 a.m. Courthouse downtown. Don't be late, Mrs. Moretti. He turned and walked toward the mouth of the alley where a car waited, the same black car from last night, I realized. Before he reached it, I found my voice. Why me? There must be hundreds of women who'd marry you without all this drama. He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. In the shadowy light, his expression was unreadable. Because you're desperate enough to say yes, but strong enough to survive what comes next. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in an alley behind a diner, my fate signed away in blue ink, wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. That night, I went to the hospital like always. The nurse greeted me with wide eyes and barely contained excitement. Miss Ruiz, I don't know what happened, but Marco's entire account has been cleared. And Dr. Richardson, the neurologist we've been trying to get consult, he's been paid in advance for 6 months of care. I walked into room 407 inches a daze, staring at my brother's sleeping face. I'm sorry, I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. I hope this was the right choice. Marco, of course, didn't answer, but the monitors beeped steadily, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid they'd stop. Friday came too fast and too slow all at once. I stood on the courthouse steps at 9:55, wearing the only dress I owned that didn't smell like fryer grease, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought for our parents' funeral 10 years ago. I'd tried to make myself look presentable, but the mirror that morning had shown me exactly what I was. A tired, scared girl about to make a choice she couldn't take back. The black car pulled up precisely at 10. Adrian emerged, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine, spread tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, no tie, effortlessly elegant. He barely glanced at me before gesturing toward the entrance. Let's get this done. No romance, no pretense, just business. A lawyer waited inside, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who introduced himself as Mr. Chen and led us to a private chamber. The ceremony, if you could call it that, took 8 minutes. A judge I'd never met recited words I barely heard. I repeated vows that meant nothing and everything. Adrian's voice was steady, bored almost, like he was ordering lunch rather than binding himself to a stranger. Then came the rings. He produced 2 platinum bands from his pocket, simple, elegant, expensive. When he slid one onto my finger, his hand was warm, steady. Mine shook. By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. No one said I could kiss the bride. Thank God for small mercies. Mr. Chen produced papers for us to sign. Marriage certificate. Banking authorizations. Documents I didn't understand but signed anyway because I'd already crossed the point of no return days ago in an alley. The funds have been transferred to your account, Adrian said, showing me his phone. My nearly empty bank app now showed a balance that made my knees weak. Monthly stipend, as agreed. Use it however you want. Thank you, I managed. Don't thank me. This is a transaction. He buttoned his jacket and nodded to Mr. Chen. I have a meeting. Elena, my driver will take you to collect your things. You'll move into the estate this afternoon. Wait, today? I thought I'd have time. Time for what? You signed a contract. As of 8 minutes ago, you're my wife. That means you live where I live. His blue eyes fixed on me, and I saw something flicker behind the cold professionalism. Not warmth exactly, but something adjacent to it. You'll be safe there, I promise you that much. Before I could respond, he was gone, striding out of the courthouse with Mr. Chen trailing behind like a shadow. I stood there in my funeral dress with a ring I didn't ask for on my finger, married to a man I didn't know, wondering what the hell safety meant to someone like Adrian Moretti. The driver, a silent man built like a linebacker in a chauffeur's uniform, took me back to my apartment. I packed my life into 2 suitcases, clothes that had seen better days, a few books, photos of Marco and our parents. Everything I owned fit in a trunk. Ready, Mrs. Moretti? The driver asked, and the name sounded foreign on his lips. No, I thought, but I nodded anyway. We drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind for coastal roads that wound along cliffs overlooking the ocean. The houses here didn't have numbers on mailboxes, they had names and gates, and the kind of privacy that money builds like fortress walls. Then we turned onto a private drive, and I forgot how to breathe. The mansion rose ahead like something out of a dream or a nightmare. I couldn't decide which. Modern architecture of glass and steel, perched on the cliff's edge with the ocean sprawling behind it. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the afternoon sun. Balconies jutted out at impossible angles. It was beautiful and cold and entirely intimidating. The gates opened automatically, and we glided up the circular drive to the entrance where staff waited in a line like I was royalty. A woman in her 50s stepped forward as I exited the car. Mrs. Moretti, welcome. I'm Helen, the house manager. If you need anything, I'm at your service. Mrs. Moretti, that name again, alien and strange. Thank you, I managed, letting her lead me inside. The foyer alone was larger than my entire apartment. Marble floors, a chandelier that probably cost more than Marco's medical bills, artwork on the walls that looked museum quality. Everything was pristine, perfect, untouchable. Helen gave me a tour that I absorbed in fragments. Formal dining room, chef's kitchen, library, gym, pool, guest wings, east wing, west wing. I lost track after the third sitting room. Finally, she opened a door on the second floor. Your suite. Suite, not room. Because apparently, I now lived in a world where bedrooms were called suites and were larger than some houses. The space was decorated in soft creams and golds, with a 4-poster bed, a sitting area, a walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in my size. How had he known? And windows overlooking the ocean. Mr. Moretti's rooms are in the east wing, Helen said carefully. He values his privacy, and I'm sure you do as well. Translation: separate bedrooms, separate lives. The relief I felt was sharp and immediate. Dinner is served at 8 in the formal dining room, unless you prefer to eat in your suite. Mr. Moretti has a business engagement this evening but expects you to join him tomorrow night. Okay. What else could I say? Helen left me alone in my golden cage, and I sat on the bed so soft it felt like sitting on a cloud and tried to process the last 72 hours. 3 days ago, I'd been a waitress drowning in debt. Now I was Mrs. Moretti, living in a mansion, wearing clothes I hadn't bought, married to a stranger. I pulled out my phone and checked on Marco. The hospital app showed his status: stable, upgraded to premium care. Dr. Richardson scheduled for consultation next week. Worth it, I told myself. Whatever this is, it's worth it for him. That night, I ate dinner alone in my sweet food so exquisite it felt criminal, and tried to sleep in a bed fit for a princess. But sleep didn't come easily. Every shadow seemed to hide secrets. Every creak of the house felt like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. Around midnight, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in this pristine palace. Gunshots. Distant but unmistakable, echoing from somewhere beyond the gates. I rushed to the window, pressing my face against the glass, and saw headlights tearing down the drive, security personnel running across the grounds, voices shouting orders I couldn't make out. Then, as suddenly as it started, silence fell again. I stood there trembling, my breath fogging the window, watching the darkness swallow whatever had just happened, and I realized with creeping dread that Adrian Moretti had promised me safety. But he'd never said safety from what. The next morning, everything was perfect again. No evidence of the midnight chaos, no broken glass, no bullet holes, no blood. Just Helen arriving with breakfast on a silver tray and a polite inquiry about how I'd slept. I didn't mention the gunshots. Something in her practiced smile told me she'd deny hearing anything. The days that followed took on a strange, surreal rhythm. I explored the mansion like a ghost haunting her own life. Discovered the library held first editions and books in languages I couldn't read. Found the gym equipped like a professional training facility. Walked through gardens so meticulously maintained they looked artificial. And everywhere, I felt watched. Not by cameras, though I was certain those existed, but by the staff. By the security guards who patrolled the grounds with military precision. By the gardeners who nodded respectfully but never met my eyes. Everyone was polite, professional, and completely opaque. Adrian himself was a phantom. I heard him sometimes, his voice from behind closed doors, his footsteps in distant corridors, but didn't see him until the third evening, when Helen informed me he expected me at dinner. I dressed carefully in one of the designer outfits mysteriously stocked in my closet, a silk blouse, and tailored pants that fit perfectly, and made my way to the formal dining room. He was already there, standing by the windows with a glass of scotch, backlit by the setting sun. He'd shed his jacket, and his white dress shirt was rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle, and I noticed for the first time a scar running from his wrist halfway to his elbow. Elena. He turned, and those blue eyes swept over me with an assessment that felt clinical. You're settling in? It's an adjustment. I'm sure. He gestured to the table, where 2 places had been set at one end, close enough for conversation but far enough to avoid intimacy. Sit. We should talk. We sat. Staff appeared with the first course, some kind of soup that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. We ate in silence for a moment, the clink of silverware loud in the vast room. I owe you an explanation, Adrian said finally, about who I am, what you've married into. My heart kicked. Okay. Officially, I'm a venture capitalist. Real estate development, tech investments, international holdings. That's what you'll tell anyone who asks. He sipped his scotch. Unofficially, my family has been in business in this city for 4 generations. We handle problems that conventional channels can't resolve. I set down my spoon. You're saying you're a criminal. I'm saying I operate in gray areas. I broker deals, provide protection, ensure certain interests remain aligned. His voice was maddeningly calm. Most of my business is legitimate. Some of it isn't. You don't need to know details. Then why tell me anything? Because you heard the gunshots the other night. He said it so casually, confirming what I'd half convinced myself I'd imagined. You're living in my world now, Elena. I can't have you naive about the risks. What risks? I have rivals. Business competitors who occasionally forget civility. The estate is secure, and you're protected, but you needed to understand that danger exists. He leaned back, studying me. If you want to leave, I'll honor our contract financially. Marco's care continues regardless. But you walk away from the money, my monthly stipend, the settlement at the year's end, the security I'd barely begun to feel. I'm not leaving, I said quietly. Something shifted in his expression. Because of the money? Yes, I met his eyes. I won't pretend otherwise. I married you for money. You married me for whatever reason you won't share. Neither of us is here for love. No, he agreed. We're not. But the way he looked at me then, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time, felt like something other than business. Dinner continued. We talked carefully around real topics, discussing safe things like the estate's history and the city's development. He was intelligent, I realized. Well-read, traveled, fluent in subjects I'd never had time to study. In another life, another context, I might have found him fascinating. In this life, I found him dangerous. As staff cleared dessert, Adrian stood. I have work to attend to. Feel free to explore the grounds, but stay within the gates. And Elena? He paused at the door. If you need anything, ask Helen. This is your home. Now, too. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in a dining room built for 20, wondering when a cage started feeling like home. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I'd noticed it on the first day, but hadn't dared investigate a door at the end of the second-floor hallway, darker wood than the others, with a lock that looked more serious than bedroom doors needed. Around 2 a.m., when the house had fallen into sleeping silence, I crept down the corridor in bare feet and tried the handle. Locked, of course, but next to it, a small panel I hadn't noticed before, a keypad with numbers worn smooth from use. I stared at it, knowing I should walk away, knowing curiosity had killed more than just cats. Instead, I tried the obvious. Adrian's birthday? No idea. House address? The numbers were too long. Then, on impulse, I tried the date of our wedding. The lock clicked. My heart hammered as I pushed the door open, half expecting alarms to sound. But there was only silence and darkness beyond. I felt for a light switch, found it, and gasped as the room illuminated. An office, but not like any office I'd ever seen. One wall was covered in monitors showing security feeds from every angle of the estate. Another held a massive map of the city with pins and markers and colors I didn't understand. But it was the desk that drew me, covered in files, ledgers, documents marked with names and numbers and abbreviations that felt like code. I picked up a folder, hands shaking. Inside were photos of men I didn't recognize, dossiers with details about their families, their businesses, their vulnerabilities. Another folder held financial records showing transactions in amounts that made my eyes water. This wasn't a venture capitalist's office. This was a command center. You shouldn't have seen that. I spun around, dropping the folder. Adrian stood in the doorway, wearing only dark pants and an undershirt, his hair disheveled like he'd been sleeping. But his eyes were wide awake and cold. I'm sorry, How did you get in? He moved into the room, and I backed up against the desk. This door has a custom lock. I guessed. The wedding date. I didn't think it would actually work. He stopped a few feet away, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise? Admiration? Anger? I couldn't tell. Clever, he said softly. And stupid. Do you understand what you're looking at? Your real business. Parts of it. He moved past me to gather the scattered papers, closing folders with efficient movements. The parts that could get you killed if the wrong people knew you'd seen them. You said I was safe here. You are. As long as you follow the rules. He turned to face me, and the intensity in his gaze pinned me in place. This room is off limits. Not because I don't trust you, but because knowing too much makes you a liability. To me, and to yourself. Then why set the code to our wedding date? The question hung between us. Adrian's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Because I'm a sentimental fool, he said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear. Then louder. Go back to your room, Elena. Forget what you saw here. Will you hurt me if I don't? No. The word came fast, almost fierce. I told you I won't hurt you. But others might. If they think you're a weakness, they can exploit. Am I? A weakness? He stared at me for a long moment, something unreadable churning behind his eyes. I'm starting to think you might be. Then he stepped aside, clearing my path to the door. I walked past him on trembling legs, feeling the heat of him as I passed, and fled back to my suite. But as I lay in bed watching the sunrise paint my ceiling gold, I couldn't shake the image of those monitors, those files, that map covered in pins. I'd married a stranger for hospital bills. What I hadn't realized was that the stranger came with secrets deep enough to drown in. And, despite every survival instinct I possessed, I wanted to dive deeper. The following week, Adrian announced we'd be attending a charity gala. It's important that people see us together, he explained over breakfast, a meal we'd started sharing with awkward regularity. Establish you as my wife publicly. There will be press, photographers. Smile, look happy. Say nothing of substance. You want me to be a prop. I want you to be protected by perception. If society believes we're a legitimate couple, my rivals will be less inclined to test that theory violently. So I was fitted for a gown by a designer whose name I'd only heard in movies. Midnight blue silk that clung to curves I'd hidden under waitress uniforms for years. Helen arranged for hair and makeup professionals who transformed me into someone I barely recognized. When I descended the stairs that evening, Adrian was waiting in the foyer wearing a tuxedo that should have been illegal. He looked up as I approached, and something in his expression shifted. You look. He paused, searching for words. Acceptable. I almost laughed at the complete inadequacy of that word, but then he offered his arm, and I took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath expensive fabric. The gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair of champagne and false intimacy. Adrian moved through the crowd like a king through his court, shaking hands, exchanging words that sounded pleasant but felt like chess moves, introducing me with a possessive hand at the small of my back. My wife, Elena. Every time he said it, I felt the weight of eyes assessing me. Who was this nobody who'd caught Adrian Moretti's attention? The whispers followed us like perfume, but it was when we danced that things shifted. The orchestra played something slow and elegant, and Adrian pulled me onto the floor with the other couples. His hand found my waist, mine landed on his shoulder, and suddenly we were moving together in a way that felt dangerously intimate. You're doing well, he murmured, his breath warm against my temple. You mean I'm playing my part? That too. His thumb traced a small circle against my back, sending shivers down my spine. But I meant you're handling this world better than I expected. Most people find these events suffocating. I waitressed for years. Dealing with entitled people while smiling is basically my superpower. His laugh surprised us both, genuine, unguarded, rumbling through his chest where our bodies pressed close. I suppose you're right. For a moment we just moved together, the music swelling around us, and I let myself pretend. Pretend this was real. Pretend we were a couple who'd chosen each other. Pretend the way his eyes softened when he looked at me meant something beyond contractual obligation. Then I saw it. Blood. Just a spot, dark against the white of his cuff, barely visible, but unmistakable. Adrian, you're bleeding. His expression shuddered immediately. It's nothing. A cut from earlier. That's not a cut. That's... Elena. His voice dropped to something harder. Not here. Smile. We're being watched. I pasted on a smile that felt like broken glass, and we continued dancing as if nothing was wrong. But my mind raced. Whose blood was on his cuff? What had he done before picking me up tonight? Who had he been before sliding into the role of doting husband? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More introductions, more champagne I didn't drink, more photographs that would appear in society pages tomorrow. Through it all, Adrian played his part perfectly attentive, subtly possessive, every inch the powerful man who'd claimed an unexpected bride. But I kept seeing that blood spot, and it changed everything. On the drive home, silence filled the space between us. Adrian stared out the window, jaw tight, fingers drumming against his thigh in a rhythm that spoke of tension. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" I asked finally. "No. That blood wasn't mine, and that's all you need to know." He turned to face me, and in the darkness of the car, his eyes were shadowed, unreadable. "This is what I meant about gray areas, Elena. Sometimes I do things that keep people safe, including you. Sometimes those things aren't pleasant. You don't want details. Maybe I do. No. Firm. Final. You don't, because once you know, you can't unknow, and I'd rather you be able to sleep at night." The car pulled through the gates, and we rode up the drive in weighted silence. As we exited, Adrian caught my wrist gently. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For tonight. For playing your role well. For not asking questions you know I can't answer." "Can't or won't?" "Both." His thumb brushed over my pulse point, and I wondered if he felt how fast my heart was racing. "You did beautifully, Elena. You were radiant." He released me and headed toward his wing, leaving me standing in the foyer with my heart pounding and my mind spinning. Radiant. Not acceptable. Radiant. I climbed the stairs to my suite, slipped out of the midnight silk, and lay in bed watching the moon paint silver patterns on my ceiling. Somewhere in this house, Adrian Moretti was washing blood off his hands and pretending to be civilized. And God help me, I was starting to forget why that should terrify me. The morning shattered with violence. I woke to the sound of breaking glass and voices shouting orders in the courtyard below. For a confused moment, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard the unmistakable crack of gunfire and my body moved before my mind caught up. I rolled out of bed, crawling toward the window, heart slamming against my ribs. Outside, the early dawn was lit by muzzle flashes and running figures. Security personnel had formed a perimeter, weapons drawn, facing off against intruders who'd breached the gates. This wasn't like the distant shots from my first night. This was war on the doorstep. My door burst open, and I screamed before recognizing the figure Marcus, one of the security team, the linebacker who'd driven me here that first day. "Ma'am, stay low. We're moving you to the safe room." "What's happening?" "No time. Come with me now." He hauled me up, and I barely had time to grab a robe before he was pulling me into the corridor. Other staff members rushed past in controlled chaos. Marcus guided me down a back stairwell I hadn't known existed, then through a door hidden behind a bookshelf into a reinforced room lit by emergency lighting. "Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Mr. Moretti." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a concrete box with bottled water, surveillance monitors, and the sound of my own panicked breathing. The monitors showed different angles of the estate. I watched security forces engage the intruders with professional efficiency. Watched bodies fall, theirs or ours. I couldn't tell. Watched the careful choreography of violence unfold in grainy black and white. Then I saw Adrian. He moved through the chaos like death itself, flanked by two men I didn't recognize. He wasn't hiding or coordinating from safety. He was in the thick of it, weapon in hand, taking down attackers with movements that spoke of training and experience that venture capitalists didn't have. I watched him shoot a man who'd gotten too close, watched him take cover behind a fountain and return fire, watched him command his forces with hand signals and sharp orders I couldn't hear, but could see obeyed instantly. This was who he really was. Not the polished businessman in tailored suits, not the charming host at charity galas. This warrior moving through violence like it was choreographed, this was Adrian Moretti's true face. The battle lasted maybe 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Finally, the shooting stopped. Bodies lay in the courtyard, all intruders, I noted with guilty relief. Security forces secured the perimeter while others tended to wounded. Adrian stood in the center of it all, speaking into a phone, blood spattered across his shirt. I don't know how long I stayed in that safe room. Long enough for the sun to rise fully. Long enough for my hands to stop shaking. Long enough to realize that the life I'd agreed to was so much more dangerous than I'd understood. The door finally opened. Adrian stood there, changed into a fresh shirt, hair damp like he'd showered. But I could still see it in his eyes, the adrenaline, the violence, the cold calculation of someone who'd just orchestrated death. "Are you hurt?" First words out of his mouth. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He stepped into the room, and the door sealed behind him with a pneumatic hiss. We were alone in the bunker, the monitors still showing the aftermath outside. "What you saw, was you being who you really are?" I interrupted. "Not a businessman, not a venture capitalist. I struggled for the word. Mafia boss, he supplied calmly. The word you're looking for is mafia boss, head of the Moretti family, controller of the Eastern Territories, heir to an empire built on violence and power. He moved closer, and I should have been afraid. But all I felt was a strange, electric awareness. That's what you married, Elena. That's what's keeping you safe. Safe? Safe? I laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to me. There are bodies in your courtyard. Yes. Bodies of men who came to hurt me by taking what's mine. His eyes bored into me. You're under my protection, which makes you a target. Today's attack was a rival family testing our defenses. They failed. The message has been sent. What message? That touching you means death. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His hand was steady, no tremor, no hesitation. A hand that had killed people less than an hour ago. I told you before you're safe here. Today proved it. My men will die before they let anyone reach you. I didn't sign up for this. Yes, you did. You just didn't read the fine print. His thumb traced my jawline, a touch so gentle it made my breath catch. This is who I am, Elena. The monster in the mirror, the devil wearing a suit. You can hate me for it if you want, but you can't say I didn't warn you. I stared at him, this beautiful, terrible man who'd bought me with my brother's life and now stood in front of me covered in metaphorical blood, looking at me like I was something precious. Why me? The question I'd asked before but never gotten answered. Real answer this time. Why marry me? He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still cupping my face. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because I needed someone real. Someone who wasn't born into this world, wasn't corrupted by it yet. Someone who'd married me for honest reasons, even if that reason was money, rather than power or fear. His eyes searched mine. Because when I saw you standing in the rain, whispering desperate prayers, I recognized something. What? Myself. 20 years ago, before this life swallowed me whole. He dropped his hand and stepped back. You should rest. The estate is secure now. This won't happen again. How can you promise that? His smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Because by tomorrow, everyone in this city will know what happens to people who threaten my wife. The Rossi family just signed their death warrant. He left me there in the safe room, and eventually, Marcus came to escort me back to my suite. The courtyard had been cleaned, the glass replaced, the blood washed away. By afternoon, you'd never know violence had shattered the morning. But I knew. I'd seen Adrian Moretti's true face. And the most terrifying part wasn't the violence or the danger or the bodies. It was that I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd touched my face, like I was something worth dying for. The days after the attack were strange and suffocating. Adrian disappeared into his world of retaliation and power plays, gone for hours or days at a time. When he was home, he was distant, professional, treating me like a houseguest rather than a wife. The warmth from the bunker, if you could call it warmth, vanished like it had never existed. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. Helen tried to keep me busy with trivial things, interior decorating choices for rooms I'd never use, charity committee invitations from people who wanted access to Adrian through me, shopping trips to boutiques where everything cost more than I used to make in a month, but all of it felt like gilded distraction from the cage I'd chosen. I started noticing things. The way certain rooms had panic buttons hidden in decorative molding, how the staff never quite met my eyes, as if afraid of seeing too much or being seen. The way my phone had apps I hadn't downloaded, tracking my location whenever I left the estate, which was almost never. One evening, while exploring the library, I found it. Hidden behind a false row of books. A small electronic device, blinking a steady green light. A bug. Someone was listening. I stared at it for a long moment, then carefully replaced the books and walked away. If Adrian was monitoring me, confronting him would just alert him that I knew. If someone else had planted it, someone from the outside telling Adrian might trigger another attack. So I stayed silent. Added paranoia to the growing list of things I swallowed daily. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mansion felt oppressive, its luxury suffocating. I wandered down to the kitchen around midnight, thinking tea might help, and found Adrian there. He sat at the island counter in the dark, a glass of scotch in hand, staring at nothing. He'd shed his jacket and tie, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair disheveled. He looked exhausted and human in a way I'd never seen. Can't sleep either? I asked softly. He glanced up, surprised, then gestured to the stool next to him. Join me in my insomnia. I sat, and he poured me a glass without asking. We drank in silence for a while, the house settling around us with creaks and whispers. They're calling me the Mafia bride, I said finally. The press, society pages are having a field day speculating about us. I know. I'm sorry about that. Are you? Sorry? I turned to face him. Or is that exactly what you wanted? Me as a public shield, a distraction from whatever empire building you're doing. Both can be true. He swirled his scotch. I wanted a wife who'd legitimize my public image. You're doing that beautifully. But I didn't anticipate. What? That I'd give a damn about what it costs you. The admission hung between us, honest and raw. Why do you do it? I asked. The violence, the crime, the constant danger. You're brilliant. You could have been anything. Why choose this? I didn't choose it. It chose me. He drank deeply. My father was the head of this family before me, his father before him. By the time I was old enough to understand what that meant, I was already too deep to escape. You're either in the family or you're a threat to it. There's no middle ground. You could walk away. Could I? His laugh was bitter. You think I haven't thought about that? Dozens of times, hundreds. But walking away means leaving a power vacuum, means war between the families, means everyone I've protected for years becomes vulnerable. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the weight he carried in his eyes. I stayed because walking away would cause more suffering than staying. That's the trap of power, Elena. Once you have it, relinquishing it becomes another kind of violence. That's a convenient justification. It's the truth, whether it's convenient or not. He reached out and took my hand the first time he'd touched me since. The bunker. His thumb traced over my wedding ring. I'm sorry I brought you into this. You deserved better than a husband who deals in darkness. I made my choice. Under duress. For your brother. That's not really a choice. I squeezed his hand. Maybe not, but I'm still here. That's a choice I make every day. We sat there in the dark kitchen, holding hands like children afraid of monsters, and for a moment, the walls between us felt thinner. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted to something hard and cold. I have to go. Now? It's 2 a.m. Business doesn't sleep. He stood, already sliding back into the armor of control. Stay inside tomorrow. Don't go anywhere, not even the gardens. Promise me. Why? Because the Rossi family is making their countermove, and I need to know you're safe while I handle it. He cupped my face, the gesture becoming familiar. Promise me, Elena. I promise. He kissed my forehead brief, almost chaste, and then he was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with 2 glasses of scotch and the ghost of his touch on my skin. The next day I kept my promise, stayed inside, tried to read, paced my suite like a caged animal. Evening fell with no word from Adrian. Then, night. The staff moved through the house with unusual tension, and I knew something was wrong. Around midnight, Helen knocked on my door. Mrs. Moretti, you should pack a small bag. Essentials only. My stomach dropped. Why? Mr. Moretti's orders. If he doesn't return by 2 a.m., we're moving you to a secondary location. Where is he? I don't know, but he made arrangements for your safety. She hesitated. He wanted you to know that if anything happens to him, Marco's care is guaranteed for life. It's in a trust that can't be touched. If anything happens to him, terror crystallized in my chest. He's in trouble. He's handling a situation, but we must be prepared for all outcomes. I packed, mechanically, my hands shaking. Threw clothes and toiletries into a bag while my mind screamed denials. He couldn't die. He was too strong, too careful, too powerful. Death was something that happened to other people, not to men like Adrian Moretti who moved through violence like water. But I'd seen the blood on his cuff, seen bodies in the courtyard, seen the truth of how fragile life was in his world. At 1:57 a.m., headlights swept through the gates. I ran downstairs in time to see Adrian emerge from the car. He was alive but barely shirt-torn and bloodied, a gash on his forehead, moving with the careful stiffness of someone with broken ribs. Oh my God. He waved off the medical staff rushing toward him. I'm fine. Handle the others first. You're not fine, you're bleeding. Elena. He focused on me, and even through the pain, his eyes were fierce. I'm fine. It looks worse than it is. You have blood all over you. Most of it isn't mine. He swayed slightly, and I caught his arm. The Rossi problem is handled. You're safe now. Then his knees buckled, and I was holding him up, this powerful man who'd promised me safety, now bleeding in my arms. Get the doctor now, I screamed, and finally, people moved. They took him to his suite, the rooms I'd never entered, and I followed, refusing to be shut out. The doctor worked while I stood in the corner, watching Adrian's blood soak through gauze, watching him grit his teeth against pain he wouldn't voice. 3 broken ribs, concussion, knife wound that missed major arteries by an inch, the doctor reported. He'll live, but he needs rest. I'll rest when I'm dead, Adrian muttered, and I wanted to hit him and kiss him in equal measure. Everyone left eventually, and I stayed, pulled a chair to his bedside while he drifted in and out of consciousness, drugged on painkillers. Sometimes he'd wake and see me, and his hand would reach for mine. You should go, he mumbled once. Don't need to see this. Shut up, I said gently. I'm staying. Stubborn. Married to you. It's contagious. His laugh turned into a wince. Elena? Yeah? Thank you. For being here. For staying. I squeezed his hand. Where else would I be? He fell asleep, and I watched him breathe, counting each rise and fall of his chest, reassuring myself he was alive. This man who'd bought me with hospital bills and danger. This stranger I'd married. This devil in a suit who touched my face like I was precious. I watched him sleep and realized with creeping, terrible certainty that somewhere in the past weeks, the cage had become something else. Somewhere between fear and fascination, between survival and choice, I'd stopped looking for the exits, and that terrified me more than all his violence ever could. Adrian healed slowly, and I became his shadow. The staff seemed surprised that I stayed in his suite, monitoring his recovery, bullying him into taking medications and resting. He was a terrible patient, impatient, restless, trying to work from bed until I physically removed his laptop. You're going to tear your stitches, I warned, blocking his attempt to stand. I've had worse. Great. Have worse after you've healed from this. I pushed him back against the pillows, gentler than my tone suggested. The Empire can survive a few days without you micromanaging it. You don't understand. I understand you almost died. The words came out sharper than I intended, edged with fear I'd been suppressing. I understand that you promised me safety and then came home bleeding. I understand that this life you've built might kill you before our year is even up. He stared at me, something shifting in his expression. Would you care? If it did? The question hung between us, honest and dangerous. Yes, I admitted quietly. Against all logic and self-preservation, I think I would. Adrian reached up and pulled me down to sit on the bed beside him. His hand found mine, thumb tracing patterns on my palm. You shouldn't. Caring about someone like me is just asking for heartbreak. Too late. I'm already asking. He pulled me closer, and I let him, until I was lying beside him on top of the covers, his arm around me, my head on his uninjured shoulder. We lay there in silence, listening to each other breathe, and it felt more intimate than anything we'd shared. The Rossi family is finished, he said quietly. Not destroyed, I'm not that cruel, but neutralized. They won't be a threat to you again. You did that for me? I did it for us. For this? He gestured vaguely between us. Whatever this is becoming. What is it becoming? Something I didn't plan for. His fingers traced through my hair. You were supposed to be a convenience. A shield and a tax break and an image fix. You weren't supposed to be. Human? Important. He turned his head to look at me. You weren't supposed to become important. My heart hammered against my ribs. You weren't supposed to be complicated. You were supposed to be a simple devil, easy to hate, easier to leave. Are you planning to leave? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Thought about the luxury and the danger, the lies and the rare moments of truth. Thought about Marco recovering in his hospital bed because this man had kept his promise. Thought about gunshots and blood and the way Adrian had touched my face in the bunker like I was worth dying for. No, I said finally. Not yet. Not yet, he echoed. That's honest, at least. We fell asleep like that, tangled together on top of his covers, two broken people finding temporary shelter in each other's damage. When I woke, it was to Helen gently shaking my shoulder. Mrs. Moretti, I'm sorry to wake you, but there's a situation. My stomach dropped. What kind of situation? The hospital called. Marco is awake. I was up and moving before my brain fully processed her words. Marco. Awake. My little brother was awake. Adrian was already sitting up, ignoring his injuries. Go. Marcus will drive you. I'll arrange for Dr. Richardson to meet you there. But I need you to go see your brother. He caught my hand, squeezed it. That's what all of this was for, remember? Go. I'll be fine. I kissed him. Didn't plan it, didn't think about it. Just leaned in and pressed my lips to his, quick and grateful and full of all the complicated feelings I couldn't name. Then I was running, down the stairs, into the car, watching the mansion disappear behind me as we raced toward the hospital. Street Catherines looked the same, but everything felt different. I burst into room 407 to find Marco sitting up in bed, thin and pale but awake, his eyes, Dad's eyes, focusing on me as I entered. Elle? His voice was raspy from disuse. How long was I out? I couldn't speak, could only throw my arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder while he patted my back with confused concern. I'm okay, he kept saying. Why are you crying? 47 days, I managed. You've been in a coma for 47 days. Doctor. Richardson arrived and gently pulled me away to examine Marco. I stood by the window, watching the sun rise over the city, feeling like I could finally breathe for the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. He's awake? Yes. Thank you, for everything. Don't thank me yet. We still have complications to navigate. What complications? When you're ready to come home, we'll talk. Home. He'd called the mansion home, and I hadn't corrected him, because somewhere in the past weeks, that's what it had become. The complications, it turned out, were named Rossi. I stayed at the hospital through the morning, catching Marco up on the Basics car accident, coma, medical care arranged by my husband, a detail that made his eyes go wide. You got married? It's complicated. Elle, you've been single since Tommy in junior year. Now you're married to some guy who can afford 47 days in a premium ICU? That's not complicated, that's suspicious. Smart kid, always had been. When you're stronger, I'll explain everything. Right now, just focus on recovery. But before I could say more, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression tight. Mrs. Moretti, we need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Ma'am, please. It's not safe here. Ice flooded my veins. I kissed Marco's forehead. I'll be back soon. I promise. Marcus hustled me out of the hospital and into the car, which peeled away from the curb with unusual urgency. I tried calling Adrian, but it went straight to voicemail. What's happening? Rossi retaliation, Marcus said grimly. They tracked your location to the hospital. Mr. Moretti's handling it, but you're exposed here. They wouldn't attack a hospital. Ma'am, these people don't care about civilians. If they can't get to Mr. Moretti, they'll settle for getting to you. We drove fast, taking side streets and back routes. I kept watching the rear window, expecting to see pursuers, but saw only normal traffic. Maybe we were being paranoid. Maybe the car behind us accelerated. Marcus saw it too. Hold on. What followed was a car chase straight out of a movie, except movies didn't capture the sheer terror of it. Marcus drove like a professional because he was one, I realized, weaving through traffic, taking turns at speeds that made the tires scream. But the car behind us kept pace. Call Mr. Moretti, Marcus ordered, tossing me his phone. Speed dial 1. Adrian answered on the first ring. Status. We're being chased. 2 miles from the hospital, heading toward the Marina District. Silence then. Put me on speaker. I did. Adrian's voice filled the car, calm and controlled. Marcus, take them to the docks. Warehouse 7. Team's already en route. Copy that. Elena. Adrian's voice softened. Listen to me. You're going to be fine. Marcus is the best. Just hold on. The car swerved around a corner, and I slammed against the door. This is insane. I know. I'm sorry. I'm coming for you. Then the rear window exploded. Gunfire. They were shooting at us. Glass rained into the back seat, and I screamed, ducking down as Marcus accelerated impossibly faster. We're taking fire, Marcus reported, voice steady despite the chaos. 2 minutes, Adrian said. Hold them off for 2 minutes. The The docks appeared ahead, industrial warehouses and shipping containers. Marcus whipped the car into an alley between buildings, then slammed to a stop. Out, now. We ran. My heels broke immediately on the uneven concrete, but I kicked them off and kept moving. Marcus led me into a warehouse dim, filled with crates and shadows. He positioned me behind a stack of containers. Stay here. Don't move unless I tell you. Then he was gone, moving to the warehouse entrance with his weapon drawn. I crouched in the darkness, heart slamming, listening to footsteps echo outside. Voices in Italian. The distinctive click of guns being readied. They were coming. This was it. The consequence of marrying Adrian Moretti. Not luxury or security, but hiding behind crates while men with guns hunted me like prey. The warehouse door burst open. 3 men entered, fanning out, weapons sweeping the space. Marcus fired first, dropping one. The others returned fire, and the warehouse erupted in echoes and muzzle flashes. I pressed my hands over my ears, making myself small, praying to gods I'd stopped believing in. This couldn't be how it ended. Not when Marco had just woken up. Not when Adrian Ann's arm wrapped around my throat from behind. I tried to scream, but the grip tightened, cutting off air. A voice hissed in my ear, accented, cruel. Nice and quiet, Mrs. Moretti. You're coming with us. He dragged me backward toward a side door I hadn't noticed. I thrashed, kicked, clawed at his arm, but he was too strong. The world started going gray at the edges from lack of oxygen. Then suddenly I could breathe again. The man released me, and I collapsed, gasping. I looked up to see him staggering backward, blood blooming from his chest. Behind him stood Adrian, gun raised, face carved from stone. Elena, run! But more men poured through the door. Adrian fired with cold precision, dropping 2, but there were too many. Marcus was pinned down across the warehouse. We were outnumbered. Adrian reached me, pulled me behind cover. Are you hurt? No. How did you? Later. He fired 3 more shots. We need to move. An explosion rocked the warehouse. Smoke and fire erupted from the entrance, and suddenly Adrian's team was pouring through a dozen men in tactical gear, laying down, suppressing fire. The Rossi soldiers fell back, retreating through the same door they'd entered. In the chaos, Adrian grabbed my hand and ran. We burst out a back exit into blinding sunlight, and there was a helicopter waiting, blades already spinning. Get in! He lifted me bodily into the chopper, then climbed in behind me. We lifted off as gunfire peppered the landing pad below. I watched the docks shrink away, my ears ringing, my whole body shaking with adrenaline. Adrian pulled me against him, and I buried my face in his chest, feeling his heart hammer as fast as mine. I've got you, he murmured into my hair. I've got you. You're safe now. But I wasn't. We both knew it. As long as I was his wife, real or contractual, I'd never be safe again. The helicopter took us to a safe house in the mountains, a remote cabin with security that made the mansion look undefended. Adrian's team secured the perimeter while we were ushered inside by people I didn't recognize. Only when the doors were locked and security confirmed did Adrian finally let himself collapse into a chair, his healing injuries obviously aggravated by the rescue. You shouldn't. I have come, I said, my voice shaking. You're still injured. You could have been killed. And let them take you? He laughed bitterly. Not an option. Why, I'm just a contract, right? A convenient wife for image purposes. Don't. He stood, wincing, and moved toward me. Don't reduce this to that. Not after. He gestured helplessly. Not after everything. Then what is this, Adrian? Tell me honestly. What am I to you? He stared at me for a long moment, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. You're the first real thing I've had in 20 years. Everyone else wants something from me: power, protection, money, fear. You just wanted to save your brother. That honesty, that purity of purpose. He reached up and cupped my face, the gesture I'd come to know. You were supposed to be temporary, a business arrangement, but somewhere between the courthouse and today, you became the only thing I'm terrified of losing. My breath caught. Adrian, I'm in love with you. The words fell between us like bombs. I know I shouldn't be. I know you didn't sign up for that. But I'm standing here, bleeding and terrified and completely useless, and all I can think is that, if they'd taken you, I would have burned this entire city down to get you back. I kissed him. Not gentle this time, not grateful or quick. I kissed him like he was air and I'd been drowning. like he was the answer to questions I hadn't known to ask. His arms came around me, pulling me close despite his injuries, and we clung to each other in that safe house cabin like survivors of a shipwreck. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. "I love you too," I whispered. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But somewhere between fear and fascination, you stopped being the devil I married and started being just mine. Elena, I know what you are. I know what you do. I'm not naive anymore about the danger or the darkness. I pulled back to meet his eyes. But I know you've kept every promise you made to me. Marco's alive and awake because of you. I'm alive because of you. And I choose this. I choose you. Not because I'm trapped or desperate, but because I want to. His thumb traced my lips. You're sure? Because once you really commit to this world, to me, there's no going back to normal. I was never normal anyway, and normal doesn't save people. You do. He kissed me again, slower this time, and I felt the shift between us from obligation to choice, from contract to commitment. We spent 3 days in that cabin while Adrian's people cleaned up the aftermath. The Rossi family, I learned, had made their last move. Adrian's retaliation was swift and final, not violent massacre, but complete economic and social destruction. By the time we returned to the mansion, the Rossi name was toxic in the city, their businesses collapsing, their allies abandoning them. I don't do things halfway, Adrian explained. They threatened you. That required total response. You destroyed an entire family for me? I'd have destroyed the entire city if that's what it took. He said it so matter-of-factly, like rearranging furniture. But don't worry, the violence is minimal. Mostly financial and social ruin. I'm not a monster. You're a little bit of a monster. You're a monster, though. I couldn't argue with that. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Still luxurious, still dangerous, but no longer pretend. Adrian taught me the business carefully, selectively, but honestly. I learned the legitimate holdings and the gray areas, the alliances and the rivalries, the delicate balance that kept his empire functioning. I learned which battles he fought to protect people, and which ones were just about power. I didn't love every part of it, but I understood it. And I understood him. Marco recovered steadily, and I visited him 3 times a week, always with security but no longer with fear. I told him the truth, or most of it. Told him I'd married Adrian to pay for his care, and that somewhere along the way, it became real. "So you're actually a Mafia wife now?" he asked, eyes wide. "Technically a Mafia queen, if we're being accurate." Jesus, Elle. That's so cool. It's terrifying. That too. He grinned, the first real smile I'd seen since before his accident. "But you seem happy. Happier than I've seen you in years." He was right. Despite everything, I was. 6 months into our year contract, Adrian came to find me in the garden. I'd claimed a corner near the cliffs as my space, filling it with flowers and books, and the kind of peace I'd never had in my Waitress days. "Elena." He sat beside me on the bench. "We need to talk about the contract." My stomach dropped. Had he changed his mind? Decided I wasn't worth the complications? Okay. When we married, we agreed to 1 year. We're halfway through that. He took my hand, his thumb doing that familiar trace across my knuckles. "I want to renegotiate terms." "What terms?" "The 1-year limit, and the part about this being temporary." He turned to face me fully. "Marry me again, Elena. For real this time. Not for hospital bills or image or convenience. Marry me because you want to build a life with me, empire and danger and all." I stared at him. This powerful man who'd once been a stranger offering an impossible deal, now looking at me with such raw hope it made my heart ache. "Are you proposing?" "I'm saying the first marriage was a contract. This time, I want a vow." He pulled out a ring different from the one I wore. This one with a single diamond that caught the sunlight. "Elena Ruiz Moretti, will you marry me? Again? Properly?" I laughed, tears streaming down my face. "That's the worst proposal ever." "Is that a no?" "It's a yes, you idiot." I held out my hand, and he slid the ring on perfect fit. "Of course. Yes, I'll marry you again. For real this time." He kissed me there in the garden, with the ocean crashing below and the sun setting gold across the water, and it felt like beginning rather than ending. We had the second ceremony a month later. Small, private, just Marco healthy enough to attend, and a handful of Adrian's most trusted people. The same judge who'd married us the first time looked bemused but pleased as we repeated vows that meant something this time. "I promise to be honest with you," Adrian said, his eyes never leaving mine, "about who I am and what I do. I promise to protect you without caging you. I promise to love you even when you make me crazy, which is often. I promise to see all of you," I replied, "the good and the terrible. I promise to be your conscience when the darkness gets too heavy. I promise to love you not despite who you are, but because of it, all of it." When the judge pronounced us married for the second time, the kiss felt like sealing something that had already been true for months. At the reception held in the mansion's ballroom, Marco pulled me aside. "You're really okay with this life?" he asked. "The danger? The gray morality? All of it?" I looked across the room at Adrian, who was talking with one of his lieutenants, his hand gesturing as he explained something complex. He must have felt my gaze because he looked up, smiled that rare, genuine smile reserved just for me, and winked. "Yeah," I told my brother, "I'm really okay with it." Because the truth was, I'd married a stranger for hospital bills, expecting nothing but a transaction. What I'd found was a partner, a home, a love that was messy and complicated and built on foundations of desperation and choice in equal measure. I'd walked into a cage thinking I was trapped. What I learned was that sometimes cages have doors, and sometimes you choose to stay anyway. A year after our first wedding, I stood in Adrian's office, the one I'd broken into that first week, helping him review territory agreements and alliance contracts. I'd learned the business, become his advisor and partner in ways that went beyond just marriage. "What do you think about the Lombardy proposal?" he asked, sliding a folder across the desk. I scanned it. "They're offering too little for what they're asking. Counter with this." I scribbled numbers on a notepad. "And insist on the protective clause for the families in the South District." He studied my notes, then grinned. "You're getting scary good at this. I had a good teacher. You had a ruthless teacher. There's a difference." He pulled me into his lap, and I settled against him, comfortable in a way I'd never imagined being with another person. "Any regrets?" I thought about it honestly. Thought about the violence I'd witnessed, the danger I'd lived through, the darkness I'd learned to navigate. Thought about the girl I'd been a year ago, desperate, cornered, drowning in debt and fear. "Only one," I said finally. He tensed. "What?" "That I didn't ask for more money in the original contract. I sold myself too cheap." He burst out laughing and kissed my temple. "Mercenary. I love it. I love you. Love you too, devil husband." "Mafia queen," he corrected. "Same thing." Outside the windows, the sun set over the ocean, painting everything gold and rose. The gates stood open. I'd insisted on that, one small way of reminding us that I stayed by choice. Security still patrolled, business still continued, danger still existed somewhere out there in the shadows. But here, in this office that had once terrified me, sitting in the arms of a man who'd bought me with desperation and won me with trust, I felt something I'd spent years chasing. Safe, seen, home. Poor Waitress married a stranger for hospital bills, unaware he was a Mafia boss billionaire. Turns out that wasn't the whole story. The whole story was about a girl who learned that sometimes the devil offers exactly the deal you need. That safety isn't about avoiding danger, but finding someone who'd face it with you. That love doesn't always arrive in pretty packages with clean hands. Sometimes love shows up in an alley with a contract and a promise. And sometimes that's enough to build an empire on.